Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us on this most joyous of days and giving me under 15 minutes of your attention. I wonder, as you think about the day ahead, what is dominating your mind? Is it all the food? Is it presents? Is it the wonderful traditions that we each have to help us celebrate this day? Or is it the practicalities? Is it the cooking, the washing up, navigating an annual conversation with certain family members? Maybe it's the dread of sitting through yet another excruciatingly dull Christmas episode of Call the Midwife. Okay, that's dividing opinion. Yeah, good. Whilst there is lots of fun to be had, if you're hosting family or friends today, I would imagine there is also a lot of busyness. And I can imagine this also brings a fair bit of pressure. And I wonder if I were to come to you, many of you are probably seasoned at hosting Christmas at this point, but I wonder if I were to come to you and ask you a bit of advice about hosting Christmas Day for friends or family, and I was going to ask you, what are the top 5 things that I definitely shouldn't do? What would you say? What are the top 5 no-nos for a first-time Christmas Day or party host? I asked the internet this question, and I'm going to give you just 1 minute to have a chat with the people you came with or the people around you to come up with what you think the top 5 things you shouldn't do if hosting Christmas are. Have a chat. Okay, that probably wasn't enough time to come up with 5, but hopefully we've got 3 or 4 good ones. So the first that the internet gave me was don't try a brand new high-risk recipe for the first time. A lot of wisdom in that. Hungry relatives and friends can turn feral quickly. The second one is don't overcommit to making everything yourself. Use the people who are coming. You're just hosting them for the day. You're not starring in the Great British Bake Off Breakdown edition. Number 3, don't fixate on a perfect Christmas. Someone's going to spill some wine. Someone's going to break something, probably. People have opinions about the temperature. It's all okay. Number 4, don't forget to plan some downtime for yourself. Very important in the busyness of the day and the season. You can be on day after day, spending time with friends and family, which is all great. But try not to crash. Have some time for yourself. And finally, don't ignore any tricky social dynamics. Have some neutral conversation topics ready just in case the conversation goes south. Why have I opened with this particular question? Well, we can all use a solid bit of advice and direction now and then, can't we? Christmas-themed talks in church, they normally center around that very familiar story with the angels, shepherds, mangers, wise men, and all of that stuff. But this year, we've changed up a little bit and gone slightly further back in time than that, about 750 years to the prophet Isaiah. He was God's messenger to Israel at this time, and many of the words that he spoke that were written down and remain preserved for us today speak about the promise God made to his people about a coming king who would lead them into his purpose and will for them. Isaiah's words often give a little bit more detail about what the Messiah will do and what he will be like. And there is a particular prophecy we've looked at, which is often read out at Christmas, that says this about the coming king. This is from Isaiah 9. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counsellor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. So we've looked at the names of the Messiah listed there and consider how they relate to the Christmas story and are borne out in the rest of Jesus' life. This morning, in the next few minutes, we will consider the name Wonderful Counsellor and why Jesus deserves this name and how it might apply to us today. Because as I have alluded to in my intro, we all need direction in life. We all need help to know what the pitfalls are and counsel about the things that we should pursue. And so what does wonderful counselor mean? Well, given the context that Isaiah is speaking into about God sending his Messiah to one day come and save his people, I think this name reflects that the servant will display the very wisdom and authority of God in the way that he acts, but more specifically in the way that he teaches and leads his people. And Isaiah speaks these words, and then there is a wait. A long wait, centuries of waiting for one who would arise to be worthy of this name. And this is where we come to the center of the Christmas story and the miraculous birth of the baby boy and the circumstances that we're probably all very familiar with. The nativity story, as we know it, comes from the accounts of two of the gospel writers, Matthew and Luke, who retell that incredible story as their opening to their accounts of Jesus' life. But as we reflect on the name Wonderful Counselor, we are going to look at the opening of one of the other Gospels, John. Now, John takes a slightly different approach to his introduction of the life of the man who changed everything for him. And instead of giving us the narrative story, John sets the scene by reflecting on who he believes Jesus to be based on the things he's seen with his own eyes and why that makes the Christmas story, Jesus coming to earth, so incredible. Here is just a little 4-verse snippet from his opening chapter. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. What is John telling us about Jesus here? Well, the first thing that stands out is that after being one of Jesus' closest friends and seeing him up close and personal, he believes that Jesus is God himself, stating that clearly by saying he is part of the creative force behind our wonderful universe. John also reflects on the fact that many of those Jesus came to lead into God's purpose for them rejected him. But for some others, they did receive him, and they put their faith in him as their Savior and for the forgiveness of sins, and as the culmination of God's plan to end the separation between himself and a fallen humanity. And they've now been added to his family, totally loved and totally secure in that position. God is sometimes seen or depicted as a stern and disappointed teacher for whom nothing is ever good enough, or who is distant and ever disappointed with our imperfections. But the God of the Bible is not like that. He is in the business of redemption, of rescue, of salvation, and he wants us to come to him and join his family. This is what makes the Christmas story so amazing and so worth celebrating with all you've got today. Not because it's nice to get the nativity decorations out once a year, but because if we look more deeply at this story, it tells of a God so loving who wants you to know him and his blessings so much that he would pay the heavy price of sending his son to make that a possibility. And Jesus' life, death, and resurrection is a call from God to each and every one of us to respond to him. The final piece of these 4 verses that I've not yet looked at is right on the theme of Jesus being a wonderful counselor. Verse 9 says, "The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world." We see in the remainder of the Gospels that one of the ways Jesus gives light to his people and how he is a wonderful counselor is through his teaching. Teaching that is so memorable, thought-provoking, and challenging to our negative human tendencies. And I just want to touch on one example before concluding and the impact that it has on me on a regular basis. One thing that traditionally I've always been really bad at is holding a grudge, staying mad at people when they've annoyed or upset me. And you know, on occasion, people have pushed me into giving it a good go, but I'm just not very good at it. When I'm in that place, though, of maybe being angry with people or holding something against them, I'm always reminded of one of Jesus' parables. And this may come in handy later on today if someone forgets to put the pigs in blankets in the oven, or someone buys you the wrong thing, even though you sent them the exact link to what you wanted. Remember this story. And so Jesus' story goes like this. There's a king who's lent money to various subjects and servants, and he decides that it's time to settle up his accounts. So his money man opens up his books and sees that there is a man who owes the king millions and millions and millions of pounds, an amount that could never be repaid. This man is brought before the king, and it is obvious that he has no chance of settling this debt, even if he worked it off every hour for the rest of his life. This man falls on his knees and begs for patience and mercy. The king takes pity on him, cancels the debt completely, and lets him go. This guy, a beneficiary of incredible kindness and grace, goes away from this and finds another man who owes him 50 quid. He grabs this man and demands his money back. His debtor also asks for mercy and patience, but the first guy is not having it at all. He has the man thrown into prison so that he can work off this comparatively measly debt. The king hears about this, and as you can imagine, he is fuming. He calls the first man back into his presence and lets him have it, saying, "You wicked servant, I cancelled all that debt of yours because you begged me. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had on you?" This is an amazing picture of the mercy and grace God calls us to show to one another when someone makes an apology to you. And it's not going to be easy at all, as following many of Jesus' teachings aren't. But it comes from a place of understanding the mercy and grace God has shown us by sending his Son to make a way for us to be forgiven every wrong we have ever done, if we ask him to. And that possibility begins with sending Jesus to us at Christmas. When I consider all the things that I have done wrong, my millions in debt, that God has totally forgiven me, it makes the 50 quid so much easier to let go. This story is just one example of the teaching of this incredible man, our wonderful counselor, who comes to lead us to God and show us how to live for him. And so as I come to the end now, I want to ask the band to come back up, and I'm just going to make a couple of comments in conclusion. The first is that this Christmas, when you see donkeys, mangers, nativity scenes, stars, think of what this story really means. It speaks of a God who wants you to know him, the perfect heavenly Father. So much so that he would come down into our earthly mess and go to the cross in our place. We've also seen one of the ways in which Jesus taught the people of his day, and how these timeless, rich, and challenging words could earn him the name Wonderful Counselor. But I want to encourage you over the next few days, perhaps when the rich and delicious food has been eaten, the time with family and friends has been enjoyed, and you just want to find a little bit of space, perhaps you could take some time to read some more of these teachings and parables to experience how they cut to the heart, the absolute top line of the most important things in life, the people we choose to be, how we relate to those around us, both our nearest and dearest and those we find more difficult, and how we relate to and view God himself. There's so much noise in our world today, so much distraction, so many things competing for our attention and trying to influence us for good or for bad. But this Christmas, I want to point you in the direction of the wonderful counselor himself, Jesus Christ. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a very happy Christmas.